Hello and welcome to our first broadcast of how to be a mental health advocate. I'm Lorna, an experiential learning tutor with the RISE team, and I've been working in mental health for over 10 years as a therapist with children and young people. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to explore how we advocate for mental health in meaningful, sustainable and creative ways. This course looks to help you start thinking about all the ways you can make a difference. And by the end of the week, you'll have the information and tools to start discovering your voice in the world of mental health advocacy. Remember, this will be an ongoing process and everyone's at a different stage in their journey. The advocates that you see in the news and on social media all started somewhere. So take it step by step. And thank you so much for showing up and being a part of this, for taking the passion that you have for mental health and looking to transform it into action for a more mentally healthy world. These live broadcasts are an opportunity for you to hear from lots of individuals, professionals and organisations about the different mental health journeys they've been on. How do they prioritise their own mental health, and how have their stories led them to powerfully advocate for the mental health of others? Hopefully you will be as inspired as I have when you hear what they have to share. If you're joining us live, then please do comment and share your thoughts as you watch and interact with this broadcast. Maybe start off by saying hello and share what you're hoping to get out of this course. You can also upload your work, exercises, activities that you've been engaging with today to our website, and our team would love to see what you've been getting up to. If you're picking this up at a later date, we really hope you also find this to be a really useful resource in your own journey. You'll have seen in the workbook that you are introduced to the basics of mental health. For some of you, this might be building on existing knowledge, but for others, this could be brand new. Either way, it's all good, but we want you to know what you're talking about. No, you don't have to be an expert or an encyclopedia of mental health knowledge, but it is important to make sure your understanding of mental health is informed and inclusive before you jump in. Put simply, mental health refers to how we think and feel. If you're joining us live, then please share your own definitions in the comments below. 1 in 5 people will experience a mental illness in a given year, and 5 in 5 people have mental health. Mental health challenges impact everyone, and yet there can still be such a reluctance and shame to talk about it. Let's look at our first video, which looks at this in a bit further depth. As you can see from that video, stigma can lead to people feeling silenced or reluctant to ask for support. Stigma can come from those prejudiced and negative views that often arise out of fear when people don't understand mental illness. Next, we meet Chinai, who discusses what stigma means to her and what its impact was while caring for her mum who has a mental illness.
So looking back, stigma was a negative view about mental illness, and the negative view came from my family members. Not all of them, some of them. And I don't think they realised that they viewed mental illness in a negative way, but the things that they would say, the comments, the words that they would use to describe my mum and her behaviour, so things like mad, she's behaving in a mad way. So that's where I got my perception of what mental illness was. I thought it was this terrible thing, and it's a bad thing to have. There were some consequences for that. As a result of my mum's illness being stigmatised, I felt ashamed. I felt that I should be ashamed of my mum, especially when she's had a relapse. I felt like I also should be ashamed. And also the conversations that you hear people have, I thought I was maybe partly at fault for my mum's illness. I thought, I was blaming myself. My mum didn't say this to me, but people's reaction and people's conversation, that's how I dealt with it. So definitely, and also because I felt ashamed of it, I was not talking about it. I didn't talk about it to family, to friends, even my closest friend who I think it would have been useful for me to share my feelings with. I didn't talk about it at all because I didn't want to be stigmatised. So looking back, I think that's the reason why I didn't talk about it. And I didn't want people to laugh at me, to laugh at my mum. I think at that age, that was when I started realising that, mental illness is something that you shouldn't talk about at that time. That was my view at that time.
This course aims to challenge stigma and break down those barriers that stop people accessing the support that they need. We interviewed Dan Rowe, a project development champion from Andy's Man Club, and we're about to hear about his journey and how he came to be involved in the amazing work that he does. Andy's Man Club are a men's suicide prevention charity, offering free to attend peer-to-peer support groups across the UK and online. Their aim is to end the stigma surrounding men's mental health and help men through the power of conversation. Their tagline is a good one to remember, and it's a theme throughout all of our interviews this week. It's okay to talk.
So I'm Dan Rowe. I am a project development champion for Andy's Man Club, which is a men's mental health and suicide prevention charity. Originally I went through the door at Andy's Man Club up in Oldham, and for the need of going, I was in a place where 2 days earlier I'd made the third attempt at my own life within the previous 2 years. And as someone that had never struggled with mental health as a kid or all the way through early adulthood, and in fact until my son was born and I was in my 30s, I needed a place out of sheer desperation. I didn't want to go to Andy's Man Club. It wasn't something that was on my radar. It was something that was forced upon me because of sheer desperation to keep me alive and to keep me there for my family and my son. And I kind of walked through the door expecting it not to work, expecting to hear a load of nonsense and to go home and effectively go back to feeling sorry for myself. And walking through the door, hearing somebody within 15 minutes of the session starting talking about the same issues that I had, meant I felt like I was part of something. But actually that individual gave me something that I had not had, which was hope that things could get better. And I think that's why when I felt in a better place that I wanted to give something back. And I think it's a characteristic that I think men are really good at. I think if we feel like we take something, we want to give back, but we don't want to give back what we've taken, we want to give back so much more. And for me it was to get more involved with Andy's Man Club, and it was to be able to at the time open a club where there hadn't been one, which was Manchester City Centre, and that was almost 4 years ago now, since we got that launch. So it was really important that other people saw the support that I'd had, and by doing that other guys could experience what I'd experienced. I think taking responsibility is one of the hardest things I think for anybody to do, is to actually take responsibility for their own health. And I blamed everybody. I blamed everybody for what I was going through, and the last person that I kind of blamed for the way that I was feeling and the way that I was behaving was me. And it wasn't necessarily about blaming, and it was changing that kind of mindset of and understanding that the way I acted, the way I talked, the way I behaved had a direct impact of not just my family and my close friends, but actually everybody that encountered me as an individual. And that could have been someone that I sat next to on the train, that could have been someone that I saw in a coffee shop or things like that. So I was really, really conscious, and in the early days for me it was just trying to leave that impression, that of a positive impression on those of people that kind of encounter you. I think that's really important to start with, really. Self-care is a topic that gets talked about a lot, and I think it's the hardest thing to do. I am the best in the world at telling other people to look after themselves, but I think my partner would, if she was here, would advocate that I am the worst at doing it personally. I think there's a couple of things that work for me, that I know that work for me and I do on a daily basis to kind of regulate that kind of self-care. The first thing that I do in terms of these are activities, so the first thing that I do is first thing in the morning, I have a freezing cold shower. I started off at 10 seconds and that felt like a lifetime. I'm now up to 5 minutes, and as we record this it's about -3 outside, so that wasn't pleasurable this morning, but actually I find that it just gives me so much energy, and so much positive energy, and obviously there's a lot said about that at the moment. And then the second thing I do last thing at night, which is I do something called practicing gratitude. 21st century, I use an app instead of writing it down, but hey ho. So I use an app called 3 Good Things, and I just type in 3 good things that have happened that day to me, and it's a way of maintaining a mindset that I can still take pleasure out of the day, even if I've had a tough day, which we all have. The challenge for me comes from when I need to do more. I work for a charity which I love and I'm engrossed in and I'm passionate about, and it doesn't feel like work. It absolutely doesn't feel like work. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it doesn't feel like work to me. So I will quite regularly put in 60 to 70 hour weeks, which the charity frown upon. But when you don't feel like something is part of your job, or that it's not actually work, it's really easy to say yes to everything. And for me it is, I'm very much I'll say yes and then I'll work out the detail kind of later. So my challenge is always, when I need to do more, being aware to actually prioritize it. And that's the bit that I can have continuing struggles with. And it's hard, like it's really, really difficult to kind of do, but you have to find that way to prioritize that. And for me, a big way of prioritizing is I get told by my partner that I need to prioritize that. But I'm really aware, because things like sleep, as soon as my sleep starts to get affected, I know that I need to do more. Actually, in the building where our office is, there's a saying on the wall that says, "Telling stories changes the world." And I love that concept, because what Andy's Man Club won't do is fix your problems. But what it will do is, by enabling you to talk and to listen, it's the most inspiring thing for me, because there's nothing better as someone that's involved than seeing somebody that turns up on the first night, is worried, is concerned, doesn't know whether he's made the right decision to turn up, doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to make eye contact, just wants to kind of sit in a corner and kind of just be on the outskirts of things, and then seeing that person 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks later making eye contact, maybe having a bit of a smile on their face. I'm not saying that all their problems are fixed by any stretch of the imagination, but progress is a huge thing. And the guys that come and use our groups, they take responsibility for their own actions and for their own feelings. And we have a cycle within Andy's Man Club, and I use an example with his permission of a young lad who came, and he's young to me, he's in his early 20s, so he's definitely young. He turned up probably just over about 15 months ago to Andy's Man Club in Altrincham, and he talks about the fact that for the first 4 weeks he did nothing but cry. He wouldn't make eye contact with them. He was very shy, very timid, to the point where his dad travelled over from Yorkshire to bring him to the sessions. And last week he went on our facilitator training and is being stepped up to be a facilitator. He's such a strong advocate of just the power of just talking, but more importantly listening. I think a lot of our guys get more out of listening than they do from talking, because sharing stories, it connects you. And I think as a society, the one thing that we've lost over the last 20, 30 years is social connection. And that's what Andy's Man Club creates, is it creates that community within a community, and it's about building those social connections.
Dan shares with us how he struggles to sometimes stop and recognises the impact this has on his mental health. Having a depth of self-awareness and understanding of what we need to maintain our mental health is essential. We'll look more at self-care and self-compassion tomorrow. You'll have seen the self-awareness task in your workbook today, and this is an opportunity to take that first step in understanding yourself better. Please do share those on our website. Let's hear more about how Andy's Man Club is challenging stigma with the work that they do.
The biggest thing is to talk about it. I think I'm a big believer is you can't be what you can't see. And if people aren't talking about mental health, if they aren't talking about suicide, then the reason why we're not talking about it is because of the stigma, because people are worried about how am I going to be perceived if I do talk about that. But collectively, we can all do it as individuals, or as individuals, we can all do it collectively. And if it's part of that conversation, if it becomes the norm to not just say, are you okay, because we're being polite, but genuinely ask, to create spaces in which people can come together and just have a coffee, even if it's just a case of just sit and have a coffee and don't talk, that's cool. Like, it's fine, as long as you feel like there's somewhere to go. But the sooner we make it part of the everyday conversation, I wouldn't think twice about telling somebody that I've got a bad back, a stranger. But would I tell someone that actually I'm having a really down day? Well, no, I probably wouldn't necessarily. That's the stigma in play. So I think it's really important that the one thing that we can all do as individuals is just talk. It's just talk, even if it's just to our mates, even if it's whatever that is, have check-ins, have regular kind of conversations. And I think we have this two aspects for men, I think specifically, and students I would imagine be the same, as this kind of weakness and burden, where we feel like we're weak to open up about what we're going through, and we feel like actually we're just going to burden everybody. And I always flip that on its head and think, ask yourself, would you feel like someone was being a burden on you if they opened up? If one of your close mates said to you, look, I'm really struggling, would you find them a burden? And the one thing that I know about guys is we'll do anything for our mates. So if somebody opening up to you, you don't see them as a burden, why would they see you as a burden by opening up? But until we start that conversation, the stigma will always be there, because the one thing that it does is it fills us with shame that we're feeling like that. And I feel, without sounding like a really old individual now, I feel really sorry for younger people, because when I was growing up, oh God, I really sound old here, but genuinely when I was growing up, there was no social media. So if you were bullied at school, if you were going through problems, it stopped when you got off the bus. And then you went home and you sat in your bedroom and stuff like that. But now it reaches a lot further with social media, and I think while there's a lot of awareness going on about mental health, there's no signposting, there's this support, and I cringe every time I see somebody say my DMs are open. I absolutely cringe, because it's not a safe and productive way of doing that. It's well-meaning, but signpost to Samaritan, signpost to Andy's Man Club, signpost to Mind, to Calm Zone, whatever it is, signpost to somewhere where people can get proper support, and not just a Z-list celebrity going, my DMs are always open, when in reality they're not. I think one of the things that I think we pride ourselves is to try and take those barriers down. So we understand that it's hard coming through the door. I remember the first time that I didn't want to go, as I mentioned, and it's really, it is tough for a lot of people, because it's almost that first step to admitting that something is not quite right within your world. But I think the biggest thing is, first of all, we operate every Monday night to any man over the age of 18, so you are more than welcome. You don't need to book. We take away that barrier. All you need to do is kind of turn up. And the biggest thing that I can say to any person or any guy that's out there listening and thinking about, is this somewhere for me, is every person that is within that room at Andy's Man Club has been in that position where you are, have questioned whether or not this is the right thing to be doing, has questioned about how they're going to be perceived, questioned about are they going to get judged, questioned about is my issue big enough. Well, the answer to all those questions is yes, your issue is big enough because it's causing you an issue. And the second thing, you'll never be judged, you'll be welcomed. Even if you turn up on a Monday because you want a free brew and a shit biscuit, like, we're not bothered, that's fine. We'll provide those tea and coffees and shit biscuits. You are more than welcome to come through, and you'll meet a group of guys that are there wanting to support each other and wanting to build that community. That's what Andy's Man Club is all about. You won't be given any advice, you won't be told what you should or you shouldn't be doing. There's no professionals operating within that space. It purely is just a group of guys wanting to support each other. And you know what, if you want to turn up and go, I'm not ready to talk, that's okay. There's no expectation to. You pass that ball on to the next person, and that's fine. If you want to come and listen for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 10 weeks, it doesn't matter until you're ready. But know that when you're ready, we're there, and we're there to kind of listen. We're across social media, of course we are. It's 21st century, we have to be. And so it's there, follow us what we're talking about. There's a load of videos on our website. Watch those videos, watch what guys are talking about within their own experiences and what Andy's Man Club has done to support them. And I think that's one way in which hopefully we can break down those barriers about what to expect when you walk through that door.
Some people believe access to mental health professionals like therapists and psychiatrists is the most important part of mental health advocacy, and others may be more interested in community-based resources like peer support, group work or training. These preferences may be tied to background, cultural values, or as a response to difficult experiences in mental health services. What's important is to remember that there is no one-size-fits-all solution to mental health, and that different people need different things at different times. We want to challenge you to think about how mental health advocacy can look, and what you might want to change about services or support in your local communities. Today's advocacy challenge is to think about who you might check in with this week. How might you genuinely ask, "Are you okay?" and then give the person space and time and listen. Try not to worry about what you will say in return. Often people just need to be heard. Tomorrow we're going to be reflecting further on how you can deepen your own self-awareness, build resilience, and how the first step of advocacy needs to be prioritising your own mental health and well-being through self-care and self-compassion. Thank you so much for joining us today.